The Seahawks lost to the Rams in the wildcard round of the playoffs. This was probably the most painful game of the weekend. It was a defensive game from start to finish, and two costly turnovers by the Seahawks helped the Rams win this one. The storyline from this game wasn't about a single play. It wasn't a single moment either. What really stood out to me was the utter and complete collapse of the Seahawks offense. After being elite through the first half of the season, Seattle once again choked. They couldn't get anything going through the air. Now on this channel, we broke down some of the issues this team has been facing just a few weeks ago. I looked at the Giants game, and I used that as a trend to showcase some of the other issues I saw from some of their games this season, most notably from their game against the Bills and their first match against the Rams. In that video, the main takeaway was that Russell Wilson was the big problem. He missed open receivers, he misread two high safety defenses, and he really struggled with any post-snap rotation where an outside cornerback ended up dropping deep. While those were the main issue in those games, most people are incorrectly placing the blame on Russell Wilson for this one. Was he great? Definitely not, but Wilson was far from the problem in the wild card. In fact, if you claim that he was the main reason why the Seahawks lost, you would be 100% wrong. Now, before we dive into the details of this breakdown, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Fubotv for sponsoring this week's video. If you're one of the 80 million Americans who are fed up with high cable prices and for dealing with shady cable companies, there's finally an alternative. It's called Fubotv. At half the price, you get the same cable TV experience that comes with over 100 of your favorite channels. As most of y'all know, I'm a huge sports fan, but I also love flipping in between movies. I'm a huge fan of Harry Potter. Over the holiday break, I was able to watch games in 4K while also streaming every single movie back to back. It was honestly the best of both worlds. Plus, I was able to DVR some of the games that I miss so I can watch them later on all my devices. The great thing about Fubotv is that with their breadth of entertainment offerings and coming at half the cost of cable, they are the best option for cord cutters out there. It's simple to use, it takes all of 2 minutes to sign up, and it's so easy to multi-view. You can watch so much content all at the same time. Sign up now for a risk-free trial and get 15% off your first month by going to Fubotv.com/gold. Again, that's Fubotv.com/gold to start your free trial and to get 15% off your first month. Now, to start this breakdown, let's go through a few plays. We'll use these to discuss some of the bigger themes I saw while going through this film. While I did mention that I didn't think Wilson was the main problem, he certainly did have his issues. This is where we'll start. The first play I want to look at is the sack that Wilson took at the start of the second quarter. This one came off play action. One of the bigger issues I saw in film was that Wilson was a bit indecisive if he didn't have any obvious options open. He failed a number of times to simply take the ugly play. He wanted to keep searching and keep looking and keep hoping, but at times this led to him holding onto the ball for far too long. This led to him taking sacks. Now, this has been an issue for Wilson throughout his career, so this isn't exactly surprising. Against a good defense, just like the one the Rams have, it caused a number of issues. On this play, the Seahawks ran play action out of single back. This is a deep bootleg where Wilson is hoping that Freddie Swain will get open on his post. Meanwhile, you have a backside drag from Metcalf, and you have Lockett running his pre-snap motion as the outlet on the left. The order of Wilson's reads are the following. You check the post as your number 1, you move on to the drag as your number 2, and then you find your check down. If none of these are open, you scramble and try to gain yards, or you throw the ball away to live and fight another down. The issue, as I just mentioned, was how long it took Wilson to get through that sequence. It takes him literally forever to realize that the post was covered. He's staring at him and he's waiting for Swain to somehow break free. This will obviously never happen. There are 3 defenders in his area. Wilson needs to recognize this sooner and he needs to move on. Now, at the point in the play where I have the screen paused, Wilson has to make his decision. We know Swain is covered, so Wilson really only has 2 options. He can throw it low to Metcalf knowing he's going to get hit, or he can use his legs to scramble and try to get outside the pocket. Regardless, he has to make a choice. Nobody else is remotely open. In my opinion, Wilson should have thrown the ball to Metcalf. No, this isn't a pretty play by any means, and it's very possible this ball is incomplete. However, when you have a big target like Metcalf who can shield the ball from a defender, this can sometimes turn into completion. Doing nothing, on the other hand, is so much worse. That's exactly what Wilson does. He keeps waiting, he keeps hoping, and he ends up doing nothing, so he gets taken down the backfield. I put this sack on Wilson. He wasn't hit until over 4 seconds, and even though the coverage was excellent, Wilson still failed to make a decision, which is the bigger issue here. While that last play was pretty bad on Wilson's part, we obviously need to give credit to the Rams defense. This was a huge reason why they won. They were elite in pattern match coverage, their use of 2 high safeties to shut down deeper throws, all combined with their pass rush to impact Wilson in the pocket, they completely dictated the Seahawks offense. Schottenheimer had zero answers for this defense. According to Pro Football Focus, Wilson was pressured on 20 of his 36 dropbacks. That's an incredible percentage even for the best defensive lines out there. The Rams did this all using a 4-man rush. They completely destroyed the Seahawks offensive line. Only Dwayne Brown was decent, meanwhile the rest of the guys up front were horribly beaten all game. The reason why this last part is so absolutely crucial to understand is that using a 4-man rush while dropping 7 to coverage really dictated the Seahawks offense. It forced Wilson into predetermining his reads. He would make a decision on where he wanted to go with the ball before the play even began. He let the fear of the pass rush affect his process. Once that happened, the Seahawks never really had a chance. The very next play after the sack I just showed a minute ago is a perfect example of this. You have a flood concept of the left sideline, while the Rams have 2 safeties on the field. If Wilson saw the rotation of the backside safety to the center, and if he saw the play side safety jumping to the flat, this would have told him to look at the flood. This is where the ball should have gone. You have Tyler Lockett running deep to clear out the deep left zone, and you have your tight end sitting by the sideline on his bench. This is a well-designed play for this offense, but Wilson never saw it. He was focused on the pass rush. He was focused on getting the ball out quickly. Instead of completing what could have been a 15-yard gain, he forced a quick throw underneath and the pass fell incomplete. Here's another example from the third quarter. The same thing happened once again on 3rd and 3. The Seahawks are running a mesh concept while the Rams have 2 safeties deep. They ended up running cover 6 on this one. The Rams played a ton of cover 6 in this game where they pushed the cover 4 coverage to the trip side of the Seahawks offense. This way they can box the Seahawks receivers while they can also play a 2-on-1 on the backside. We'll talk more about this later on, but mesh against this defense was actually a great call. Mesh created a 3-on-2 triangle where Metcalf was sitting wide open at the 26-yard line. Now mesh is extremely popular at all levels of play. It's a very simple concept to read. However, instead of keeping his composure and instead of keeping his eyes down the field, Wilson started to scramble. He stepped forward, he stepped backwards, and then he finally escaped out to the right side of the pocket. Once he got outside, he threw the ball deep up the sideline, and once again, this was another incompletion. This play absolutely kills me. This should have been a first down. If Wilson didn't let the effects of the pass rush get him, this would have been an easy play. All he had to do was keep his eyes up, throw a reasonable pass, and Metcalf would have done the rest. Wilson failed to do that on this play. He failed to keep his composure, and that's why the Seahawks were forced to kick a field goal. Now, while those last few plays were some of the worst in my opinion, let's jump backwards and talk about the pick 6 that happened in the second quarter. When this happened live, it seemed like every single player out there and even their mothers were blamed for this one. I've seen people point fingers at Russell Wilson for not looking off the defender, I've seen people blame Freddie Swain for not reaching his block, and I've seen people blame DK Metcalf for not running forward to catch his ball. The truth on this one is pretty simple. This was an incredible defensive play, one of the single best I saw all season. I just don't think you can blame any player on the offense for this one. Swain didn't have time to set his block, Metcalf was responding quickly to the catch, and Wilson caught the ball and never had time to look off a defender. Simply put, we need to give credit to Darius Williams here. Now, from a play calling perspective, because this will obviously come up later in the comments, there is some truth to the fact that this might have been projected. We all saw the pre-snap motion, we all saw DK Metcalf frustrated he wasn't being targeted on the sideline, so yes, it's very possible one might argue that Schottenheimer deserves some level of blame. While there's probably a hint of truth to this, at worst, this play should have been incompletion. Literally never in a million years would you expect this to go for 6 in the other direction. In my opinion, and I'm going to repeat this for the people in the back, we just need to give credit to Williams and move on. Now, so far in this video, I've brought up the major themes that led to the Seahawks' destruction. Some of this is on Wilson, but my god, the Rams defense was absolutely outstanding. Their use of 2 high coverages like cover 2 and cover 4, and really their use of cover 6 really clamped down on the Seahawks offense. These coverages and their execution really limited the big shots that the Seahawks love taking. The other thing that cover 6 does is that it also dictated Russell Wilson's reads. Simply by alignment, the Rams controlled who was getting the ball. Imagine the following situation. The Seahawks love using a shotgun trips formation. What they'll do with the 3x1 alignment is that they'll send the trip side to the field while lining up a solo receiver on the backside. Typically, that backside receiver is DK Metcalf, but in this game, the Seahawks rotated Tyler Lockett to that side of the field too. Meanwhile, on the field side, you have a tight end like Jacob Hollister, you have Freddie Swain or David Moore, and you have Metcalf or Lockett depending on who's going solo on that particular play. What would happen is that the backside receiver was often running a slant or dig. Since this happened quite frequently, many teams picked up on this pretty easily. All they had to do was send their cover 2 portion to this side of the field. When you can bracket the underneath slant or dig, and when you have deep route protection over the top, This completely eliminated this receiver from the game plan. Knowing this receiver is going to get double covered, there is no reason to even look in this direction. This is why Metcalf was so much less effective in the second half of the season. It's not that Wilson didn't want to throw him the ball, it's just that on a large portion of Metcalf's routes, he had 2 defenders near him at all times, so there was no reason to look his way. Meanwhile, if you focus on the trip side, what teams like the Rams did was that they sent their cover 4 in that direction. They would box in these 3 receivers, and with their excellent execution, nobody could create any separation. This happened on way too many plays. Now, being double covered like Metcalf was for a lot of his snaps obviously isn't his fault. It's honestly a testament to how good the Rams think Metcalf is. It's also not Wilson's fault for not looking in his direction. You don't throw the ball to a double covered receiver. You wait until he has a one-on-one, and since many teams would fear that Metcalf would beat them in this manner, they rarely line their defense to that side of the field. The Rams did this occasionally in this game, and this is when Metcalf was able to grab a few passes. To me, while you can't blame the players for the play call, the person you can fault is Brian Schottenheimer. To have this predictable of an offense is really the main issue. Then, when you combine the incredible pressure the Rams were able to generate on a 4-man rush, this simply made things hard. This is also exactly why I can't blame Wilson for this loss either. Yes, he clearly did make mistakes in this game. I broke down some of those in this video. But to point a finger and look at his stats from this alone to claim that tells the entire story, I think you're missing the point. Not factoring the context of how well the Rams out-schemed the Seahawks, it really needs to be considered as we look at the final score. Simply put, the Rams won this game with a superior defense, and the Seahawks lost because they failed to adapt. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel as well. Thanks again, and for my latest updates, follow me on Twitter at SamuelRGold.